Hey everyone, welcome back to Elder Gal. I'm Allison. I'm out by myself today. I went for a little walk and I'm just kind of out in nature and thought I'd talk to you about the times that it's hard to be alone. The times that it's hard or harder to be alone. And I'm very familiar with these myself as I spent about 20 years of my life really being mostly alone, I guess is the way to say it. I think I can speak to what I think are the most difficult times that people have to deal with. So that's what I'm going to discuss today while I'm out, and probably going to film this in a couple of different spots and maybe end up back home. So hopefully you can hear me great. I've got a new uh, Bluetooth kind of microphone system, and for use when I film outdoors. It's actually a lot of the reason why I haven't filmed a lot outdoors because I really didn't have a good mic system. So I think the most obvious time that we think of being difficult being alone are the holidays. And since we have the holidays coming up very soon, I thought, you know what, this is a good time to mention that. Now, I did a dedicated video about getting through the holidays alone, I think either before last Christmas. And I'm going to do another update on that in this December. But I just thought I'd touch on it in this video. I'm sure all of you, if you've been alone, you know what it's like to go through holidays alone. It's not easy. But there's a lot of other times when we're alone. We don't think about how more difficult it makes it to be alone during those situations. So in this video today, I'm going to talk about 7 situations that we can be in life where I think it's harder to be alone. And then we'll kind of take it from there. So I'm in one of my favorite spots to film, which is in front of our office and rec room area, and it's a beautiful fall day. Still warm. It's going to get cool tomorrow, so I'm enjoying the last of the warmth outside. But yeah, being alone. If you're watching this and you're already still here at this point, I bet you're a loner, or you think you're a loner, or maybe you used to not be a loner, but you are increasingly one as you get older. I think it does happen that we get more so that way as we get older. When I think back to how I was in childhood or high school or college, I had friends. I always had lots of friends to do things with. I know I always liked being alone, though. I even liked playing alone. It was weird. I've just always had an active imagination. I always liked, like, when I would be alone, I would have my, dolls or toys, and I would make up stories about like what was going on with them. And I just enjoyed doing that by myself. When you're playing with someone else, you can't really do that. But as I've gotten older, I realize the challenges of being alone at times when you don't really want to be alone. And that's what's really prompted this video. I hear from viewers and their comments about this, but I also look to my own experiences and realize that there are times when it's really, really hard to be alone. Well, I'm going to talk about next what I think are the 7 key situations that it makes it harder to be alone, and then talk a little bit about what I think could make those easier. Back home now. So, the first situation I think that I touched on in the first minute of this video was holidays, because the holidays are coming up, and I think that is the time of year we really feel the void of being alone sometimes. For me, the hardest day has always been Christmas, partly because Christmas was such a big deal when I was growing up, and my mother continued to make it a big deal even when I was a teenager. And when my son was little, we made Christmas a big deal then. And so, I'm adjusting the camera there, and so Christmas has always been a little bit hard because until I was in my late 40s, I most Christmases of my life I had people to be with, even if it was just one other person, my husband or significant other or something like that. So going about almost 20 years of my life being alone at Christmas, it's been a real change. I have learned some coping skills for that, and I did share those in the video I did on this last year. So, holidays, I think it's not just Christmas, it can be Thanksgiving, it could be holidays that we don't think of as a typical holiday, but like Mother's Day. I've shared in other videos that Mother's Day is a tough day for me because that kind of forces me to, think about the fact that my son isn't in my life. So, There are holidays that can be more difficult. Maybe birthdays are more difficult for some people, things like that. So, holidays are the first one that I think is a really big time that it's hard to be alone. The second one I would say is when you're physically sick, especially when you're physically sick to the point that it's hard to do things. It's hard to get you can't get to the store to get something for yourself. You can't really do everything you need to do around the a house. And so I think that's another time it's really hard to be alone. If you're like me, I'm just one of those people that I prefer to be alone when I'm sick. However, there are needs. I remember back during the pandemic, and I got sick one time, and I did have a neighbor, a friend that offered to. I couldn't go out for like 10 days because I was quarantined basically. And so she offered to do my laundry for me, and another friend offered to go get some stuff at the store for me, and things like that. So it was a real help. But if you don't have anyone that would do that, then that's a problem. And if you're sick more chronically for a longer period of time, in other words, not just the flu or, something else, then you basically really do need somebody. And if you don't have a caregiver that, is paid for through your, insurance or Medicaid or whatever, then that can be a real problem because you really do need someone to, help you with that. So I'd say that's the second thing. When you're actually physically ill, especially in a more chronic sense, you really do need help and you need someone there at times. The third thing is related to that, but it's about when you need to go in for a procedure like a colonoscopy or certain other kinds of procedures where I know when I had my a tooth pulled and I was put to sleep for it, I needed someone to take me to have that done. So when you have certain medical procedures, they want you to have a friend or family member that drives you there and then can take you home because you're not in any condition to drive on the way home. So that's difficult. And I've had many viewers share that in the comments that, what do you do in a situation like that? It'd be great to just hire an Uber and go there and then have an Uber pick you up. But the doctor's offices usually don't allow that. They want to make sure it's somebody that you actually know that's picking you up. And I can understand why, because you're not in any state when you've been sedated or, you're kind of out of it. So I don't think it would be real great to be with a stranger in a vehicle. So I can understand why they have those provisions. But the fact of the matter is, many people just don't have somebody that can do that for them. They just don't have a family member or a friend that can do that for them. So we're going to come back to that in a bit and talk about what are potential options. The fourth one is when you're sad. When you're sad, when you're grieving, you know, when you're going through something, especially just, maybe a difficult time in your life. I'm not talking about having like serious mental illness here. I'm just talking about you're going through a bad phase of your life. And it's still really hard when you don't have anybody that you can turn to. Now, hopefully, if you're in that situation, you can get some maybe counseling support or something like that. But some people don't have the finances for that. And if your insurance doesn't cover it, you don't get therapy. And sometimes therapy is not everything you need because, as good as some therapists can be, they're not your friend. They're not your friend. And so sometimes it would just be great to have a friend when you're feeling really down or you're going through a difficult phase of life or something like that. So that's another issue. That's another time when it's harder to be alone. The fifth one is related to that, and it's when you're actually grieving. When you've lost someone in your life, maybe you've had that significant person and then that person's no longer there, whether they're a spouse or a partner or a sibling or a parent, whatever it is. If you've lost somebody that filled that role for you and then they're no longer there, that's difficult. That's challenging. And so what do you do if you really need somebody there for you at that time of your life, but you don't really have somebody? You can't, as you all well know, you can't just manufacture a friend out of thin air to to be that person. It'd be great if we could, we could just conjure one up like a genie and say, I need your help, just be my companion for the next month to get through this, but that's not the way it works. So That one is also really challenging. The reverse of that is is also a time that can be more difficult to be alone, and that is when you have something to celebrate, when something really wonderful is going on in your life and you don't have anybody to share it with. To me, that one affects me more than when I'm sick or sad or whatever. Most of the time when I really miss having someone there is when something really great's happening, because you really want somebody to celebrate with or share it with or talk to about it, and you want somebody to, to get to just reinforce that for you. So it's hard to be alone and celebrating something and really having no one to share it with. So that's number 6. And then the last one is interesting. I added this one in because I thought about it and realized that as much as I like to travel alone, and I'm fine with that, and I've always enjoyed traveling alone, sometimes when you're traveling, it would be really great to have someone to share that with too. In other words, it would be really wonderful to have a person to share that with, to have somebody along with you. And so there's benefits of traveling alone and there's benefits of traveling with someone else. But if you don't have a person that you can really travel with, someone who's really close to you, or someone that you're two people that don't know each other tremendously well, but you both have the same passion for travel and you both know you could do a trip. If you don't have anyone like that in your life, then you're kind of forced to travel alone. And that can be very challenging. So, those 7 things, those are 7 times in our lives when I think it is really harder to be alone. Okay, so what do we do about that? What do we do about that? Well, there's not an easy answer to it. I did a video on, how to kind of bring more friends into your life. I did that a couple of months ago. So I'll probably link that at the end of this video so you can take a look at some tips in there. But the bottom line is you probably need to make connections with people in some way, so that at least you have somebody that in certain times you can call on for that. Now, maybe not for all of these 7 needs, but you can certainly call on them for a couple of those needs. Like, for instance, getting a ride to the doctor for a procedure or something like that. That's not that hard to cultivate someone to be enough of a friend, if they have transportation, that they can take you to that. So that one might not be that difficult. Some of these are a lot more challenging, like someone to spend holidays with, or someone to travel with, or someone to really be there with you when you're going through extreme loss. You've had the loss of someone in your life. That is a challenge. I've shared with you on this channel before that I was a bereavement counselor for a hospice back about 20 years ago. And it really was a great service that we provided. It was completely free for families, and we provided them 13 months of counseling, as much as they needed, basically. So sometimes in the early days of someone's grief, I would have to visit them a couple times a week. And generally, it got less and less as the time went on. There were some people I saw for the whole 13 months. And and I know it was a really great service for people to have that, because they didn't really have, so many people told me they didn't have someone to talk to. So you can check in your community to see if there are some services, bereavement services offered free through sometimes churches or hospices or things like that. Sometimes they do provide that and extend that out into the community. So it'd be worth checking on that, because having somebody to talk to sometimes with grief is really, really important. Some of these are just more difficult. Having someone, again, if your insurance covers it, having a caregiver when you're chronically sick, that could help that situation. So there's like a different fix for each of these. And there's not like a one size fits all, unless you just happen to meet somebody that, you just click with each other and you become companions for each other. I mean, not even necessarily in a romantic sense, but you really kind of pledge to be there for each other in circumstances like this. That's would be awesome if you can find someone like that. But we obviously can't always find someone like that. So I would say you have to choose what you do based on the particular type of need. and how easy it would be to fill that, or difficult it might be to fill that. There is no easy answer. I will tell you that overall, because our society is dysfunctional at this point in time, and speaking as somebody that lives in the United States, our society has become increasingly dysfunctional, and we've become increasingly uncaring to people who are struggling, whether it's physically or mentally or both. And there's not enough services in place through government agencies or the state agencies or medical systems, whatever, to help and to fill all these needs. There just aren't. And there really never has been. These are things I'm talking to you about that people used to have family that would fill that, or, a spouse or whatever. And it explains a lot to me why people, when they get divorced or even a spouse dies, they really do want to remarry, because they want that person there that they can kind of be there for each other. So it's understandable why people do that, because it's really hard otherwise to have the support system we always need going through these types of circumstances. So I would say, check out my other video that I'm going to link here, and talks about how to, increase and build friendships in your life, even if you're older, which I think is an answer to some of this. And then, seek out resources in your community. There may be resources through senior centers or area agencies on aging. That's present throughout the United States. Check with your medical provider and see what they cover if you really needed a caregiver. To know this information in advance will kind of help you not panic when a situation comes up and you realize there's no one in your life. You, instead of panicking, you think, oh yeah, I can call such and such and maybe they're going to have a solution for this. Again, there's no one size fits all. There's no one thing that probably fills all these things, unless all of a sudden have another significant other in your life, whether it's a spouse or partner, and that person can fulfill most of those needs for you as you can for them. And that's really just the bottom line. I'm not here to give you platitudes and tell you everything is always going to be okay. I'm always very real about things, and things are challenging when you go through life alone. They are, but they're not hopeless. And you don't have to be alone always if you can find some solutions to some of the problems I've gone over today. So I hope this has helped you in some way. Until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward, and take care. Bye.